Welcome back. I've got Amy Lynn Durham on the line. Amy Lynn, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank
Really
you.
looking forward to this conversation. It's been on my calendar for way too long, and I want to get to it. So, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and we'll jump into the conversation?
Sure. So I'm the founder of the executive coaching firm Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work. And our frameworks and philosophies are rooted in ancient wisdom and future sensing tools, sort of blend those two things together. Um, I left my corporate job in May of 2019. I had had this spiritual awakening in my personal life around 2015, and the whole trajectory of my life sort of changed. And at the time, I was running 90 retail telecom locations throughout the state of California. I had a little over 400 employees, and I had worked for private and publicly traded companies. And I just was really getting worn out on the travel. And I worked for a fairly great company, culture wise, great people. I was just really getting burnt out on the travel, the the grind of hitting sales numbers all the time, managing teams, crisis management. I mean, at one point we were if at one point we were having like an armed robbery a week in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley area. It was crazy. Um, but what really led me to leave that space was I had started incorporating these activities with my team that helped them see the humanity within each other and the impact that it was having on our productivity, on our well being, on our profitability was incredible. And I was like, I want to leave this space and sort of pursue this life purpose thing. Didn't really know what it was of re-injecting myself back into the workplace, sharing these tools with others. That's sort of how it started. And I planned to leave my job for about a year. And when I planned to leave my job, I really planned like, how do I want my team to feel when I leave? How do I want to leave them? Um, didn't really plan a lot for myself. In hindsight, I probably could have done that a little better. Um, so yeah, I left. I traveled a little bit throughout the summer of 2019. I put all the activities I was doing with my team in the book, Create Magic at Work. Went off to UC Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute, grabbed my executive coaching certification, went through the most rigorous program there. They really train you well. And then Create Magic at Work was born. So off to the races with that and really teaching others the importance of spiritual intelligence was what my thought leadership was from a faith neutral lens. And um, it hasn't stopped. So here I am today. What is it? 5.5 years later, something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome, and I love how you connect, the wisdom from the ancients to, the future and harmonize those because we can learn from the past and obviously we can learn from the future and planning it and it's not a only use this ingredient, using a cooking analogy. So like you're cooking something, okay, you have a spice rack. What spices you're going to use? Well, some dishes you're going to use these spices, others you can use this. The order is important. I was thinking about that, that analogy a little bit. It's like if you're baking a cake, it's like don't put the flour in after you put it in the oven. And it's like don't sprinkle the flour on the cake after it's done. Well, it's not going to really be a cake. It's going to be a goo at best, if anything. So it's important on order, but understanding that along the journey, there's going to be some twists and turns and some what I like to call organized chaos, and which obviously you experience, especially sharing that story about the robbery a week kind of thing, and that's a traumatic experience for everybody involved, and there's a whole lot of legwork and documentation you have to put forward and all of that, and you're like, oh, great, okay, now I got to get on a plane to here or drive up the coast to there, and it's like, okay, do you know what the traffic on I-5 looks like right about now? It's like, no, and it's like, yeah, no, no, I think it'd be quicker for me to walk. It's like, I'll get my comfy shoes. I'll see you in 6 hours, and away you go. But again, it's one of those things in leadership, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, where I think a lot of leaders will leave a lot of tools in the tool bag when they're trying to navigate through some things because maybe it's chaos and they don't necessarily know, okay, what do I need to do this? But sometimes it's counterintuitive because in the chaos of the moment, a lot of people are like frantic, now, act, now. It's okay to just go, hold on. Hmm. Okay, let me think about this. It's a few seconds, and that can make a huge difference. And those experiences, I think, flush out the opportunities to do some amazing things in organizations because every organization is going to have some chaos and challenges and all that. It's called every day, I think. So you're going to experience that, but how you navigate through that differentiates how your organization either celebrates successes or navigates through challenging experiences. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Some of the best wise and well, the best wise and effective change agents in the workplace are the ones that can be a calming and healing presence um, in the middle of chaos. And you'll see those people. What my team and my teachings that I've learned from mentors like to call edgewalkers from Dr. Judy Neal's work in the workplace. They're the bridge builders and the change makers um, of the world. And I would say look for the edge walkers in the chaos, and you can learn some things from them because they thrive somehow in those moments, and they are that calming and healing presence that are like, okay. And at some level, at their core, they understand what some of us might learn later, which is on the edge of chaos. And this comes from the quantum leader from Dana Zohar. She's a philosopher and a physicist that has done some incredible work in combining Eastern and Western business practices and laid some incredible foundational work for spiritual intelligence in the workplace. On the edge of chaos is where innovation occurs. And if you can understand that concept, which every day I think I still think about it and try to play with it, right? You will shift how you show up in chaotic moments because you can, like you were saying, pause. It's almost like standing serene in the middle of the storm. You can pause and you can say, okay, something really cool is going to come from this. What is that going to be? And then it gets exciting. And you can also, I coach leaders to gather their team after they've launched an initiative that failed and get together and say, wow, what did we learn from this? What did we learn from the failure? What are some of the innovations we can get from the chaos? There's all sorts of comparisons that people share, like um, launching the rocket multiple times and it explodes and then finally it works, right? Like, how can we have innovation without mistakes and trying? If we're not doing that, we're stuck and we don't go anywhere anyway. Those are some of my ideas behind what you just shared.
Yeah, it's like fail fast or fail forward, or sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. There's all kinds of leadership books and stories on it, but it's because it's true. You have to fumble around a little bit, and which is good. If a rocket's gonna fail, I want it to fail early on before we start putting humans on it, or satellites, or anything else that companies are paying a ton of money for. You don't want those things to blow up, or people, of course, and so that's why you test and you try different things. And I love your analogy about being calm in the middle of the storm. Again, a lot of times it's counterintuitive. People are panicking and they're running around, and it's like, well, if you're running around, you're not focusing on what's going on. You're too busy in the momentum of running around, where you're sitting there and you're saying, okay. And it's something that takes time. I mean, some people are better at it than others. For me, it took a long time for me to develop that, but now it's a situation where if something is going sideways, it's like, okay, let's pause for a minute. And some people that are witnessing you are wondering, why are you calm in this? Because I choose to. It's like, why are you chaotic in this situation? Well, it's because they choose to. And in many ways, it's a learned behavior, but studying, the ancient wisdom, and wisdom is the key thing to focus on
Mm-hmm.
here, is the wisdom to know, okay, I've been through challenging times in the past. What did I learn from them? If I'm going through something that's not fun, okay, do I get upset, mad, yell, scream, swear, whatever? If that can help you, okay, but I find, obviously it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to. I find that that doesn't serve me. So it's like, just
Mm.
for me, sit in it for a moment, not ignoring it. I know it's there. I'm literally, just kind of in an additional state, just kind of like, okay, put the map on the table, and I'm just kind of looking at it going, okay, what would be the best next step to get me around this situation or through it? It might be several steps, but I need to take a step. What step should that be? And even in many cases, that paralyzes leaders. They're like, I don't know which way to go, so they don't go anywhere. It's like, it's easier to change direction when you're in motion than when you're just standing still. So it's better to do that. But again, that comes from experience and wisdom, and truly learning what experiences you've had, whether they're success stories or challenges. And you mentioned about, those teams that, sat in meetings after a failure. And, I think about worked for a Fortune 500 organization years ago, part of their project management team. And at the end of every project, our team would gather, and we'd bring two or three consultants from other projects that weren't on our project at all. They knew nothing about it. They didn't know the names, what we were doing, nothing. So they went into it cold. And we had these meetings. Okay, what went great? Okay, what didn't? What can we learn from it? And then we'd get the input from the people that were completely unbiased and out of it. They said, well, maybe try this, try that. Just by adding those additional quote unquote outsiders, we improved our efficiency dramatically, to the point where we could take on more client work without bringing on additional people. That made headquarters really happy with us. They were like, "Oh, wow, you're bringing in more revenue. You didn't ask for any additional staff. We weren't burning ourselves off because we understood, okay, how to do things, what worked, what didn't." And of course, there's always things like, oh yeah, maybe we should have applied this methodology when we were doing this. Okay, now we know. But we went into those quote unquote post-mortem meetings for the ones, especially the ones that didn't go well, but we approached it with a level of curiosity and not condemnation. Because if you go into a meeting and they're just yelling at you and all that, how much are you hearing? Nothing. You've checked out. You're thinking about, can't wait to get to the cottage this weekend, or oh, I can't wait to go home, or I'm going to go out this weekend, or you're thinking about any place else but where you're at. You're off in la la land, and that's good for your survival. By all means, do it, but it doesn't. improve anything, and it's a lost opportunity for organizations when, they run meetings in that fashion. So let's dive in a little bit more into work. And obviously, I know
Mhm.
quantum leadership is a big primary focus of things. So when you go into
Mhm.
an organization, I know everyone's different, but I know there's a lot of similarities in some of the challenges that organizations are currently facing.
Mhm.
What are some things that some breakthroughs that you've seen with organizations after they've worked with you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they vary across all sorts of different, depending on what someone is working through. I can tell you a recent one that I think is pretty applicable to what some people might be going through right now. We use a tool called the archetypes of change, and it measures how it's part of the Edgewalker work, and it measures how people respond to change, sort of to keep in line with what our conversations about chaos and change. But the cool part is, like, I'll give you an example. I'm working with a leader right now who has a really large team, and he is an amazing leader. He wants to do work for the greater good, and he also has the well-being of his team top of mind. He hears feedback from his team that they're afraid AI and robots are going to take their jobs. And he has this amazing vision of the future where he can automate and be more efficient with certain tools to free them up to be able to have relationships with their business partners and their vendors and their suppliers, where they can cultivate these relationships on a human level that can't be replaced by a robot or by AI. Some of the fear that he's getting from his team is, well, I have job security right now doing all of this like input on the computer sitting in front of a screen. And so he has this vision. So his challenge that I'm helping him through is to, when someone is a vision caster like this, when someone can sense what's coming next, and one of the biggest shadows that comes up with that is, how do I help my team be included in this vision, feel included in this vision? Because if you can sense this vision so far down the line, sometimes your team is like, I'm not seeing the vision, I'm not on board. So a really cool way to kind of bring that all together, that we like to do at Create Magic is at work, is talk about the archetypes of change and who you're talking to, and nothing bad, no judgment. Um, there isn't one archetype that's worse than the other. It just is. And so there's guardians, there's placeholders, there's edge walkers, there's heart tenders. Like, the heart tender archetype is the person that just like loves getting the daily work done and kind of keeps the company moving, right? To me, that's kind of the person that's in the present moment all the time. The placeholder is the person that's like, nope, these are our past values. This is how we hold on to the past. If we make any change, things are going to go wrong. And they're kind of like that person that really holds the past values of the organization. So from a leadership perspective, this is one philosophy and tool and framework we use at Create Magic at Work. The leader can study this and kind of say, okay, I'm going to go have a conversation with someone that's might be a placeholder. So I know the fears that are coming up within them when I'm speaking to them. So I maybe communicate to them from a place of wisdom and compassion, to where their ego doesn't get triggered, where they start getting defensive and protective. And then they hear me, and then they can come along with the vision. So there's some really cool ways that we do that. But that's one way that we work with leaders to help them in the workplace. One of
I,
many.
I love that because it's meeting people where they are and
Hmm.
communicating with them in a way where it helps them. Okay, this leader understands me or knows me well enough to know that this is something that is maybe borderline traumatic or triggering or brings back bad memories, or they just are naturally that type of individual that is, don't break it. It's not. it's not broken. Let's just roll with it, even though staying stagnant is a good way to break everything because it's just you have to continue to grow. So, but meeting people and guiding them along the way to at least getting to a point of consensus. It's like working with boards of directors. They've got all different opinions and views on certain matters, but getting a consensus on the greater good of whatever you happen to be pursuing or promoting with the board is, something that, again, it's a skill, but it's something that you can do it. And anybody that's all the different types of leaders can be successful at that. But I think the commonality, and based on what you said, it kind of reaffirms this that you just, again, going back to understanding your people and getting them to be able to understand where you're coming from, not from this place of authority. I'm the CEO. This is what we're doing, and that's that. But more of a, getting their input on that because what that does is it creates a lot of long-term trust in future things that'll happen. And eventually, those people that were really reluctant, I've seen it, I know you have too, over time they're not as reluctant because you're satisfying their concerns. You're helping quiet down their amygdala when you come into the room. They're like, "Uh-oh, here we go." And you can see it. Some people, their body language screams, they're worried about something. And, to your point that you mentioned a moment ago about the CEO and dealing with his team or their team, I don't know if it was a he or she, but dealing with their team on AI and robots. And, that's a common concern that we've seen. But you know what? There's been a common concern about technology taking over, our roles forever. But to be able to spend more time human to human and having a conversation instead of this short, I've got, a 20-minute meeting and I can have this person. You can say, you know what, AI is taking care of my presentation and slide decks and all of that. So I found 3 hours. So you know what, I'm going to go with that vendor that we've been working with for 5 years and just take them out to lunch or go just have, an outside meeting somewhere besides an office or a boardroom and just think, what's going on with your business? What are some things, not necessarily to look for additional client work, but just get a better understanding where people are. Because I have found, especially when working with organizations, and dealing with vendors as well, there were certain vendors that we had the opportunity to do that. And when we did that, boy, did that strengthen that relationship. And there was an understanding, especially in challenging times. Doesn't matter if the vendor's having challenges or we are. There was a common understanding, like, okay, then not a problem. We'll get to it next week, or yeah, more than happy to extend the time that you're gonna remit payment for this service. We're good on that. We understand you're going through a rough patch. We'll work with you on that. If you know them because you're wanting to help them out. It's not just a transaction. It's a human to human experience, and we need more of that in work. And I think if we do that, you're going to see a decline in the low engagement numbers. You're going to see a decline, or excuse me, a decline in people that are identifying as being burned out or overworked because they feel this human connection when they're at the workplace. And when they have that, retention increases, the burnout numbers drop, productivity increases. It's just a healthier place to be because then it allows people to be creative. And when they're creative, that's when magic happens. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% correct. And um, you have me thinking also that's a call for all of us listening to step into skill building. You can skill build in these skills that are more connecting and relational with others rather than doing things where you're punching a keyboard. And so, yeah, there's some development, there's a call for some development there for those of us that really need to learn how to connect with others. And I mean, you're saying it right there. People, I mean, it's so I feel like it's so old school, right? Like it's like people want to do business with people they like. And so, of course, they're going to give you a break if you're going through a rough time because they know you, Michael, and they know you're a good guy, and they know that because they know you as a human being. And so it sounds so simple, and yet somehow with all of this technology and all of these ways we can connect and communicate with each other, we're losing that. And so this is the call for leaders to step into, they're not soft skills. I mean, this is the work. This is, how can I be a wise and compassionate leader during chaos? How can I maintain inner peace even when I'm under great stress, and be a wise and effective change agent for others, and be a calming and healing presence? That's the call for all of us now with AI and automation.
Yep. It allows us to leverage those tools. And technology is supposed to make our lives easier. We've somehow made it be a little bit more complicated because I think we focus so much on the tool side of things instead of the human side of things. So my hope is that AI and robotics and other innovations that do a lot of the quote unquote manual work or the time consuming work for us, again, will free us up to be human again. So, Amy, I've loved this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
So LinkedIn, I'm always on LinkedIn under Amy Lynn Durham. And then you can find all the information about the amazing work that we do with Create Magic at Work, the executive coaching firm, at createmagicatwork.net. .net. Anytime you want to connect, we're here to help. So
Awesome.
we're here to help you be human and make
Yeah,
magic.
there you go. So definitely have that in the show notes. So Amy Lynn, thank you again for your time and for all the amazing work you're doing. It's so desperately needed. So appreciate you and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me send some magic to your audience. I appreciate it.
Thank you.